Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the problem with the concept of Western progressive overload. And this is something that I've had to come to realize as I've become more mature as a lifter, more mature as a coach, more experienced, of realizing that as much as I used to like this system and promote this system, of why it ultimately doesn't work and why it breaks down when you are no longer a novice lifter. And we have to understand why it works so much better for some novices than others. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the history of this is a concept that went all the way back to ancient Greece. And because it's so deeply ingrained in the strength in the lifting world due to going back thousands of years, and yes, this does go back thousands of years, it's very, very hard to dispel it. Well, for those of you who know the story of that, the original story behind it is the story of Milo of Croton and Milo and the Bull, which, again, Milo, a wrestler in ancient Greece, used to put a bull calf up on his shoulders and squat it up and carry it around. And as the bull grew, he was strong enough to lift a fully grown bull. Now, seems incredible to those of us today with selectively bred meat bulls and everything, selectively bred cattle. Well, we don't eat the bulls, but trust me, none of you have ever bought a bull at a store. You're not eating that. It might be in your dog food. You're not eating it. But the bulls were only got up to maybe 400 pounds. So essentially he could do a half squat and yoke walk with a 400-pound bull. And it takes about 2 years for them to reach full size, right? So he had 2 years to get this done. Well, here's our issue. How many people out there think being able to do a half squat and a yoke walk with 400 pounds is insanely strong? It's not. It's not. All right, you guys are watching me do good mornings right there for sets of 10 with 365. All right. So he might have been the strongest man of his era, but he wasn't the strongest man alive. And that's the issue we run into with the progressive overload system. Most of the modern ones are linear programs, and they only work for novices. They only work for novices. Occasionally you'll get a guy who says, well, it works for this athlete or works for me, who's really strong, but it's like usually they're fat and they're on a ton of drugs. Okay, why? Because they're continually upping the dose and they're continually increasing their food and gaining body fat. Well, in that case, it'll work. So let's come over to the point of why it doesn't work. Because it relies on a lot of neurological adaptation. In other words, we very, very quickly reach a threshold where putting 10 more pounds on your bench or 10 more pounds on your squat is going to require you to gain several pounds of muscle. Early on, we have a lot of neural adaptations. So if we're coming in and we're doing, 3 or 5 sets of 5 or whatever, we're going to be getting significant growth. And I don't want people to think that this isn't going to cause a lot of muscle growth. It will. You need to be very, very clear about that. It will induce hypertrophy if food is there. And it can produce maximum hypertrophy. We know that based upon rep range studies. But our issue is that it's lack of total training volume in some cases. And we're pushing for more and more weight on the bar. And again, we get a lot of neurological adaptation early on. You're gaining muscle pretty quick. You're probably gaining a pound or two of muscle every month early on, noob gains. And it will push you through your noob gains very, very quickly if you eat and sleep enough. Absolutely will. Problem becomes the guys who don't want to eat enough. Or they eat faster than they can make the gains, and then they get fatter and they get scared of getting even fatter. Well, that's not the same thing either, right? You overbulk too quick instead of just keeping a steady weight gain there. And the guys who can maintain the steady weight gain, what happens? The food is anabolic. So as the neurological adaptations start to cap out after a few months, and now we're going to pure hypertrophy, because I want to make this clear. 5 rep sets are not the fastest way to get strong. They do not cause the same intramuscular coordination and neurological benefits that we get from hitting 1 rep maxes. They are not in the same ballpark. They don't make you super strong. in comparison. They can make you stronger than doing 10s on your 1 rep maxes. But there's a lot of neurological adaptation there. And what ends up happening is that people stall continually, and they stall continually because now they're relying on pure muscle growth to add weight to the bar. Okay, and we need to understand the difference there. It fails because we're now reliant upon muscle growth. Well, muscle growth is a slow process, and if you've already finished a lot of your noob gains out, what happens? Those gains slow down. And then we start going, man, I mean, I've been stuck at, whatever. I don't care whether it's 225 or 155 for sets of 5 on your bench. What do the strength to weight ratios look like for the strongest benchers in the world? Anybody ever bother to look? You guys know that Julius Maddox benches less than double his body weight? What? Benches less than double his body weight. These are the strongest benchers in the world. So what I'm suggesting to you is that once neurological adaptations have occurred, which you're gonna get them pretty quick for 5s, few months, they're done. The only thing that's making those 5-rep sets go up is pure muscle mass. Well, how much muscle do you need to gain realistically to put 10 pounds on your bench press? How much body weight do you probably need to gain? Probably 4 or 5 pounds. You see where we're going with this? If you need to put on 4 pounds, 5 pounds of body weight to put another 10 pounds on that 5-rep bench, and you're gaining 1 pound a month, it's going to take you 5 months to do that. And because we're running moderate volumes at this point for a non-novice lifter, just running progressive overload models, we're not maximizing adaptation anymore, especially if we're not training our weak points. So we may not be gaining muscle quite as quickly as we could be if we just added more work in, more supplemental lifts. When I say more work, I don't mean you need to be doing 10-rep sets of squats and deadlifts. I mean you need more supplemental work for your weaker links. Okay, and that doesn't even necessarily mean 10s, it could mean 15s, 20s. Okay, that's the point, and that's why I tell people to go to Conjugate once we've stalled on a novice LP. Once you stall on a novice LP, it's time to go to Conjugate. The problem is that a lot of people don't know how to train yet. They don't know how to lift. And if you can't perform a correct box squat or correct bench or anything else with correct form, and I don't mean great form, I just mean decent form. Like if you can't sit back like I just did on the box, right there, you got a problem with Conjugate. It's not going to work because you're going to be hitting maxes every week. And you're going to have to hit new lifts. You better know how to move. So if you haven't learned how to move and how to box squat and how to hinge your hips and all these things yet, you're not going to be able to run that system. But if you do, you'll get around this stuff because now we go over to what is my max on all these lifts every week. We're testing maxes and then we're working off percentages of those maxes to do speed work. And then we're filling in the gaps with high volume, almost bodybuilding style training for your weakest links so that you get thicker faster. Because if we can make the weak links grow faster, everything grows from the speed work. And the maxes go up quicker and we find the newer weak links again. Okay, so a system like this that is non-linear, right? It's non-linear and it works within your current abilities on a weekly basis, both weak links and then percentage work. We don't stall anymore because we're always working at our capacity and we're always shoring up our weakest links so that we're growing as a whole all the time. All right? And we're not relying purely upon a neurological adaptation that is capped out, and then we're not stuck just relying on weight increases to be from muscle growth. We are, but then we're only testing certain lifts periodically. So we will only have tested a lift when we know the weakest link has hypertrophied significantly in that lift from previously. Okay, this works. But the straight concept of linear progression or progressive overload of just taking the same lifts and attempting to get stronger and stronger on them on a weekly basis is only going to work for a very, very short period of time until you are relying upon pure hypertrophy for the increases. And in which case, when you're doing that and you don't have your lifestyle perfect and you're not gaining weight continually, it falters. It fails. Okay, it fails, it breaks down. Now, you can eat, sleep, and debowl your way through it for a very, 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 very long time. But I think for most of you out there, that's not what you're going to want to do, and it's not what I would recommend that you do. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.